Hey everybody, here we are with another devlog for my formerly untitled driving game. This past month has been focused primarily on designing the game's first real level, LATC. I've been figuring out the best ways to keep the player in flow, adding hittables and destructible objects to the environment, and filling out all the barren areas with blockout buildings. I've also worked a bit more on the vehicle, including testing basic replication, reworking drifting, and finally, for the most obvious change, chopping the top off the sedan and adding a cage. This is Tristan Cole's Pro Driver Devlog number 7. Level design is something I've always been vaguely interested in, but never had the opportunity to really deep dive into. I've designed some small levels for my other games, but nothing really out of the ordinary or interesting to look at. With TCBD, since the levels are going to be crucial to the core feel of the game and replayability, I really wanted to take my time and get deeper into the process and create levels that are truly fun to play, but also interesting to just take in as a whole. I gotta tack on that while it's taking a lot of my time, I am having a lot of fun doing it. The basic gist to LATC is that it's a map with a big central campus surrounded by various city buildings, office buildings, a theater, shopping areas, restaurants, and even a baseball stadium. The cutoff points for the map include a highway and a river and canal with a drawbridge that blocks off the downtown area of the city. I initially started with the main campus layout and started peppering in little buildings on the edges. As the map grew, I started honing in on the road system and tried to make it feel less square. You can currently do a lap around the map, and there's a handful of long straight roads, but there's also a lot of smaller roads and paths in between that the player's meant to take and explore. I also just added a long curvy back road that allows the player to showcase their drift skills. While at face value the city's fairly large, the vehicles are moving really fast, so you can get from one side of the map to the other about 40 seconds going max straight through. To make it feel even bigger, I wanted to focus on verticality as much as possible. In a city with large buildings, you have a lot of unused space if you can't go inside them or use them for traversal, like Spider-Man. So the ability to make quick jumps or grinds to rooftops and being able to transition between them is crucial. A while back I wrote down a list of things that were potential transition pieces like air vents, power lines, roof edges or awnings, structural supports, signs, or even art installations. I've been slowly integrating those into design and allow the player to easily traverse the city when they're quote-unquote off-roading. The speed of the vehicles also means I have to pay special attention to physics objects in the environment, and I think I've finally found a solution to that. Before, since the vehicle physics utilize substepping and therefore get a lot more physics updates than the other objects, the hit was recognized far too late, and as a result the vehicle would stumble over even larger physics objects when driving over them. The fix? A huge capsule collision volume that knocks everything out the way and a custom hittables channel at even the highest speeds. Maybe this isn't the most elegant way to solve it, and I'll probably iterate on this later, but it's allowed me to successfully integrate multiple sizes of physics objects and breakables into the environment without sacrificing any driving flow. There's now breakable fences, hittable boxes, bags, machines, and street props, and soon all the traffic and street lights will be hittable too. Nothing's going to get in the way of your combos. Imagine you're driving down the road and see a beautifully angled surface to launch your car off of, in-game of course. You quickly steer into it, smash the boost, hoping to pull off some sick air, only to ride up and smack the front of your car right into the ramp like it's a brick wall and crash instead. Has that ever happened to you in a video game? This is a prime example of one of the pain points I'm trying to eliminate when designing levels for TCPD. The player must stay in a constant state of flow in order to maximize enjoyment and keep them engaged. One way that I'm tackling this problem as I build out LATC is to create different hidden ramps and other player safety nets where necessary. This means that any places where there's stairs, any rough terrain that's meant to be traversed, any gaps between objects in the environment, etc. need to be all filled in. It's imperative that the vehicle doesn't get stuck between or on anything when driving or jumping across the map. TCPD's goal is to be very fast-paced and keep the player moving throughout the environment, so no player realistically should expect or be disappointed that their wheels or vehicles won't fall between parked semi-trucks, for instance. Grind splines are also a little bit tricky right now with how I have them set up. Currently, I have a single spline blueprint that uses a beam mesh that I have, and it allows me to create any kind of grind spline that I want. Right now, there's not a way to change the mesh directly, but I'm also not sure if there's a need. Depending on the area of the map and what I'm setting up for grinding, I've just been placing it and then hiding it in game. This so far seems to be the most ideal way to do things, even if it does take more time, because realistically a lot of the grind positions are probably going to be built into the models themselves. The other problem is that the grind splines have to be longer than the object they're grinding on right now. The big reason is for the extra spline length that they auto-detach when you're at the end. And if they're too short, the vehicle usually ends up hitting the static mesh and it gets thrown off course. I'm gonna have to just rework on the grind code overall and the blueprint spline. It's just another thing that I'm constantly thinking about during the design phase right now. Well, it finally happened. I made all the vehicles in TCBD convertibles. Kind of.
As you know, if you followed the devlogs this far, I've been against making all the vehicles in the game convertibles. Yes, it's clearly better for player visibility, but it's just kind of boring. In Crazy Taxi, it made a whole lot of sense and it worked great. Would you want every vehicle in Just Cause or GTA to be a convertible though? I'd guess not, and that's kind of where I was coming from. The way I think about design stems from tweaking my current or envisioned reality, so not all cars are convertibles in real life, and they shouldn't be in game. But you can't really always have what you want, and personal sacrifices must be made for the sake of making a better game. So I made a compromise. They're not convertibles, they're just chop tops. I had an idea one night and decided to just chop the top off the sedan model I was using and add a cage. I'm unsure why this didn't occur to me before, but as soon as I mocked it up, I knew I was onto something. The cage fits the theme of the game. Vehicles are heavily modified street cars with their own style. Not only does it increase the visibility of the player into the cabin to be able to see the character's tricks and animations, but it also gives the character the ability to climb around the vehicle easier and a unique look that I can base all the future vehicles in the game off of. To me, the cage will act as one of the unique design pillars of the game, similar to the rocket engines and the Rocket League cars. The cages can be stylized to any vehicle and enable sharing the same list of tricks across vehicles in a much easier fashion. My mock-up's just ugly and temporary, but imagining the possibilities has me really excited to start working with a real vehicle artist.
Who doesn't like sliding their car around a corner at breakneck speed? Only people who can't. The thing is, drifting isn't something I was initially focused on as a base gameplay element. I know people love drifting, but to me it's one of those things that's really fun to watch and fun to do occasionally, but in general for games I much prefer the driver-esque feeling of driving, which I'd classify as more of a grippy style. The car's a lot of traction and can get loose with extra wheel spin from a stop while taking corners at high speeds with the handbrake. Besides being tough for me to program that kind of handling model, TCPD isn't really meant to work like that in my mind. The vehicle is basically 100% traction at all times, except when you want to break it for combo, fun, or gameplay reasons. I'm not quite sure why, besides the fact that I only understand the underlying physics on a basic surface level, but drifting is one of those things where I can do it in 20 other games and still have no idea how to implement it or how it should feel in my game. Initially, before I added any kind of traction, it kind of felt like you were drifting the whole time. After I added a friction model and making the vehicle feel more realistic, the first model I tried was just turning down the anti-slide from 0 to a negative value, which added force that pushed the vehicle to the side and kind of felt like the player was drifting. This was okay, but something still didn't feel right. I got feedback that it was possibly just too much force, so I turned down the friction back to 0 so that the car was sliding freely as it was in the first pre-alpha build, and I put a little angle, depending on the steering input direction amount, on the vehicle's fake body model to make it appear sideways. However, no sideways force means that you can just drive around like normal with a larger turn radius. It only felt like you were drifting when you were turning really hard. In the latest drifting model, we get the current sliding speed into a dot product of the current horizontal velocity and right vector. If the car is on the ground and moving, a force is applied to the vehicle, ignoring mass, multiplying the current right vector and the current traction value, which is just the current sliding speed times the current traction value. Along with this, I angle the body in local space on the z-axis, depending on the drift direction. This results in a stylized, exaggerated, but fun drifting feel that's possible but difficult to fully control, especially when you're in boost. I wanted it to be relatively difficult to control because drifting is meant to be a combo extender, and there needs to be a penalty to using it while still keeping it fun to actually use. I'll be making minor tweaks like updating the drift transitions to be a little bit smoother with timeline curves, but I think that now it's finally in a good spot. But what good is drifting if you can't do it with friends? That's why I've started testing very basic replication in TCPD. Now when I say very basic, I do mean very basic. More or less, I updated the game mode to handle spawning multiple player controllers and then just confirm they both spawn in game and can see each other. Right now, nothing is replicated in terms of controls or functions events in the vehicle blueprint, so the client can't do anything besides just watch the server player run around. I've determined a very basic list of things I need to do to start re-architecting the game for multiplayer now though, which mostly includes combing over my vehicle code, which I am looking forward to do and cleaning up a little bit, and then moving stuff over to the player controller. And of course, stop referencing player controller 0 everywhere. So let's update the roadmap for TCPD, which I introduced in a previous devlog. My goal for the next month is to finish blocking out LATC so that it feels like a fully playable map. I also want to have it working so that 2 players can drive around on the map together in a multiplayer free roam mode, even if tricks and scoring and all that isn't currently replicated. I really feel that once I get a playable map and can start fine-tuning it, adding the gameplay and objectives and modes and all that stuff, some of which I've already prototyped, is going to be a breeze comparatively. Famous last words, right?
As a final note, I've started the process of getting my Steam page all registered and ready to go so that you will finally have a place where you can go wishlist TCPD. I'm not sure when it'll be up, but of course I'll make a trailer and announce it on the channel as soon as it happens. Thanks for watching and following along with the development of Tristan Pro Driver. What do you think about LATC's design? Are you excited to try the multiplayer modes? Maybe you've got a recommendation for like an arcade drifting or driving game that I should check out for some inspiration. Let me know. Like, subscribe, and check me out on Twitter for the latest news on Tristan Pro Driver. Later.